All right. Well, welcome to the Golden Frequency. My name is Jackson Strong, and I am here with an incredible new ally, Miss Clementine. And it has been a power-packed couple days of knowing you, which, surprise, when you meet really special new people, I find, that the relationships and the detail and the opportunities and synchronicities kind of go super quantum, super fast. And I'm really excited to be in a super quantum dynamic here. And I've been so incredibly impressed by your knowledge of one of the most fascinating subjects I've ever encountered, and that is the history of natural law and private law and corporate citizenship and straw man and all this really complicated legal esotericism that has fascinated me for a decade or so. And I say with a grateful, humble heart, I feel like a bit of a baby when I hear you start riffing on it. And so I'm so excited to dive in today because this is one of the greatest challenges that we face here in the Matrix and here on Earth. Yes. And that there are these multitude of systems of control that surround us in our education, our medicine, everything, energy, everything. And the legalese system that has taken us from the place of divine law, from a place of true freedom, and into this enforced servitude and this covert control that goes back to the Vatican and other sources. I'm super fascinated by how you've expressed your perspective on this, because we are free, we are free, we are free, we are free indeed. And now is the time to reclaim our lawful rights and our responsibility to create that for ourselves and create that for others. And that's a huge part of our mission, of my mission, and I see so much of that in you as well. And so I'm so excited to learn more and hear you share how you are creating freedom for others, particularly in the plant medicine space, particularly in the church space, so that we can return to the expression of our divine inheritance and create heaven on earth, which feels like the best goal I can think of. Yeah. So would you begin by just giving us a bit of your journey into this fascinating world and kind of what you've been doing over the past decade plus of researching all this?
Yeah, broad question. Well, the sort of original, I stumbled into this. This was very just kind of God guided, following the path, saying yes when I was called to, and even despite a lot of challenge. And the story begins, me and my business partner, Astra, who just incredible sister wife, just incredible connection, soul guided kind of life partnership type of relationship, which is really rare and really beautiful, and it's been tested, and just incredible person and unique person. And we just got together, a lot of creative synergy, and started to work. She had been brought into the medicine work by a Mexican healer, and I kind of shortly thereafter just met up with her spontaneously, or like serendipitously, and then we just kind of began serving together. It was very organic. And a little while in, we're kind of figuring out, well, what's the container? What are we doing here? And it was really clear. God was saying, make a church. And this is in 2017, and nobody even heard a toad. Nobody ever heard, ayahuasca was still underground at that point, more or less. And so yeah, making a church felt outlandish. It was completely like, what? Okay, God, you want me to make a church? I grew up Baptist. I'm like, Mom, I'm making a church. And she's just like, what are you talking about? Yeah, it was just, she's really cool. She's actually done it. Well, I won't. She's done the medicine work, so I won't actually out her. But essentially, yeah, she, like me, this is outlandish, but it was the path, and it was ahead of our time. And yeah, so we anchored the template, started to work on it. Of course, I'm going the 501c3 route. The attorneys in our lives around the plant medicine space were encouraging 501c3. And, so I start the mountain of work to figure that out. And, but just, it was blocked. It was blocked at every turn, everything I did. I worked so hard on it. And then the board would shift, or we had to move. There was a lot of things that just kept kind of blocking the path. I listened to the current and what is coming forth. And, so about, as the story goes, I got to the altar and I just said, what do you want from me? I'm surrendering. I'm doing what you asked of me, and everything is blocked. Show me, what do you want? And I'm at the gym 2 weeks later, and I was just already kind of on private law, learning about this realm, and just came across a former judge, and he was talking about private churches, and I just was amazed. I could not even believe that there was the trailhead. And then I was on fire from there. I was so fascinated. I was so in awe that there were these backdoor methodologies and systems, and it's all based in consent and contract and free will and sovereignty. I was just and it was during COVID times too. And so that layer was happening, and I was organizing despite COVID. And that was an interesting thing about it. The governor at the time in Texas said, if you're a church, you can still organize if it's outside. And then I was writing religious exemptions for people for the vaccine, for their employers and things like this. And it just was really convenient to be a church. And, we bootstrapped it. It was just pure faith, pure love, just pure service, and many years of service. And, so then I became research mode, which if I get in research mode, watch out. I am hyper fixator. I'm autistic. I will go and go and go and go and go. I am intense, but amazing synthesizer. And so, yeah.
I see that, and I love it.
I love it.
Yeah.
It's so good. Give me a research room, give me a computer, and oh my gosh. Yes. And the library too. I inherited a library, and I have just a lot of different books that that pertain to this as well. But anyway, yeah, so that was kind of the path. And then, as I'm doing it, we're also a big part of our work. So we have Temple of the Sacred Womb. It's a medicine church in Austin. We were the first above ground. It was very novel, and inspired a lot of other templates, if you will. But from there, people, we're bringing healers from South America, and doing retreats and things like that. And a lot of them would say, can you help us with a church? Or people would approach me, can you help me? And I just began, sort of sharing what I knew and what I was so happy to share. Oh my gosh, it was so cool. I was just so in awe of it. And and then I took the judge that I had learned under, I took his courses to be able to set them up. And I was so thrilled, so grateful for the opportunity. And
the judge was already speaking out publicly and informing people on this?
Oh yeah, long time.
Oh, wow.
30 years in this game for him.
Wow.
So then I studied.
What an amazing, truly amazing synchronicity. Divine appointment.
Right, yeah.
Because finding those super credible sources of this has been the secret sauce and the missing piece for me so often. And I've met so many, and hours and hours on YouTube and different courses and big promises. Then we get to the finish line. So, this probably isn't going to work. It's wait, what?
What?
What are you talking about?
Who said that? Just joking.
I'm not hesitating. I'm gonna hold back names on that one. But there are a few where there's all these big claims, and then you get to the finish line, and you're really kind of left with this total take back of any real potency, and finding the really true credible sources that can really stand in the fire, and where the BS doesn't get burned away, or the BS does get burned away, and the truth stands. So. Yeah, just celebrating that. Yeah,
well, and ultimately it's all right. It's a gray area. It's, it's a frontier. It's a reclaiming of our rights and our freedoms that we've known, or, our forefathers and everybody knew, foremothers and forefathers knew, but it's been lost, right? And so it's a reclamation of that, but also it's a testing. Everybody on the psychedelic frontier is at risk, no matter what you do. Everybody, doing anything of any kind of, weight, in the freedom space, if you will, is at risk. It's a gray area. Everybody talking against the vaccines was at risk, either socially or otherwise. It's a space of testing and experimentation, and everybody in this field has to be open to that. Now, the question, is, do they know how to test it? Do they know how to go into the courts? Do they understand equity, jurisdiction, and these kind of things? That where can it stand? Can it hold weight? It's to me, it's a great experiment of what can we, how can we kind of shimmy and work within the system and not be so outside the system. I see this field as a spectrum, and people are very obsessed with being completely private and be all the way, no taxes, no nothing, everything completely private. But then they lose a lot of functionality, and they lose a lot of ability to navigate with freedom and ease in the system. We have to at some point surrender to the fact that we do have to use money, we do have to use time and these structures that we live in, and at some point you have to honor that we were born into this system. And so my teacher, aside from that teacher, I got a teacher through his group who started to teach me about the trusts, and the judge had a ceiling, wouldn't teach tax, wouldn't teach. And to me, that was a big gap. I wanted to understand, well, how are you going to set these PMAs up and set these churches up and have you just figure it out kind of thing. And so I felt that it's unethical to be setting these up without, the all of covering all the bases. So then I started learning about the trust, which is whoa, whole other level of magic and important, like critical information for the awakening. And but at the same time, my teacher, who is now my most committed. I've been working with him for 4 years. I meet with him twice a week, and I build his business. He builds, he backs mine, and a lot of collaboration. There are a lot of amazing synergy. But he was kind of like, when I started to approach him to explore more, he said, I have been praying for a protege and you're the one. Like, I have been praying for the right person to pass this knowledge on, and you're the one. And he's also not educationally minded, which is my zone. I love to give people the understanding. For me, that is just the joy of it. And so began working with him, and that was just also very God guided, and he's offered me this incredible knowledge, incredible experience, 15 years in the corporate world and managing hundreds of millions in estate planning, and he's a very New York Jew, like very alternative, very interesting, and so anyway, I'm kind of all over the place now, but
Yeah, that's great. And when you reflect on the journey and you go back to those like first principle source code elements, and we talk about the Vatican and we talk about ecclesiastical law, and like really go back to the source, could you give us your best explanation of like the origin point and kind of walk us forward into where we are today with these systems of control and freedom?
like kind of overview of history maybe, or
Yeah. I mean, 'cause I've heard, I know some of the acts in the 1500s with the Vatican, the Pope, and how it goes back to
yeah.
Social security numbers and these birth certificates and how they're trying to own everything, and Rome never fell, and it really just became the Catholic Church and all this type of stuff.
So all of
yeah.
that, okay, so when you also introed me, I do want to emphasize my zone is collective systems. I was called to focus on church, tribal dynamics, understanding collective systems and the trusts, how to organize resources. I have not specialized in individual kind of straw man, et cetera. That's beyond my scope. And I will zone the fuck in, And so for me, just according to my path, that was my realm. When it comes to the more straw man and these kind of more commercial elements and things, that's not my zone. Of course, not yet. If I am placed in that lane, I will go the distance. But so just to be clear about that, but for me, everything goes back to divine and natural law and these ancient principles that humanity lives by and has always lived by across all time and space. Natural law is one of my most prized, just most treasured understandings, and I feel it's such a critical element. It's beyond even, all the Vatican and all of that was even later. We're talking about England's, our legal system is based on England's legal system, which is based on Rome's legal system. And, to me, it just goes really far back in a lot of different complex pieces. And, but for me, the source, if you're talking about source code, it goes back to God's laws and God's universal principles for rightful human relation and rightful human resource relation, and how to steward our lives and our lives of our communities from a tribal standpoint. And that's the crux for me of where my work is. So regarding this, these other sort of straw man and the corporate, all of that, it's just beyond my scope, at least at this point in the journey, because I'm so fixated and yeah.
Yeah. And I appreciate your honesty around that.
Yeah, of course.
And you're still you're touching into where I'm really curious, and that is around God's law and around these natural law principles, and what is it that makes those factual? What is it that gives it the weight to go from the divine into reality? Is this Ten Commandments law? What's the medium of explanation here?
Well, we could approach that from many angles. I feel inclined to focus on how it's treated in the courts, right? If we're talking about how to determine what's factual, well, facts are tested in the courts, right? And it really goes back to, let's just say, equity principles, but also legal maxims. And so how this natural law is applied, well, just to kind of back up for anybody who may not be aware, divine law is God's law. It's things like the Fibonacci sequence, the patterns of reality. Thou shalt not kill. It's obvious to everybody that killing something or somebody is obviously crossing a boundary, right? What is that boundary? It's obvious to people that, for example, honesty or honoring our agreements, like if you make an agreement, honor that agreement. That's obviously truthful. It's obviously rightful. You don't need a legal system to support that, right? It's self-evident truth, inalienable rights, right? Or inalienable truth. And so as the history kind of goes with it, is there are over many thousands of years of exploring these different kinds of systems and having different kind of legal systems and etc. It became, well, what are the universal truths? How do we grasp them, to your point or your question? And it's about maxims. It's about these uncontestable truths across all time and space. And we're going back to Aristotle. We're going back to, these ancient philosophers that would write these principles that were just self-evident. And over, these thousands of years of exploration, they've come to be a body of wisdom known as maxims of law. And they are considered to be uncontestable. They've been tested in all the courts. They are principles of truth. And they're the nuggets of truthfulness that cannot be, one dictionary, law dictionary calls them axioms, like similar to axioms of geometry. So they're kind of premises that you can build your case upon because they're uncontestable. So in a legal sense, factuality is, well, this argument is based on a universal truth. And, the way it works is divine law. And originally the legal systems, at least in England, which our system is largely based off of, the original judges, aside from the king, were ecclesiastical and religious scholars. They had the religious knowledge, and those were the original judges, if you will, chancellors. And, so the way it worked is we go to God and we, as with humility, there's no way I could possibly know God's ultimate, experience and will, but I can interpret based on what I feel are truthful and what we as a consensus reality feel is truthful, these maxims, and that becomes natural law. And natural law is man's best guess at God's laws. And so they become these kind of building blocks of our reality and our tribes. And, almost all cultures on earth have very similar basic core tenets, with exceptions, obviously. But yeah, so natural law is essentially, if you put out all the systems of governance in a pot, what would be the remainder if everything idiosyncratic was taken out? So, yeah.
And it's a piece I'd kind of forgotten in the process of the case law leading up to this point, and how it's easy to say natural law, it's easy to say this is common law, and stand on business in that way. But once a judge has ruled, you have, we've got Plessy versus Ferguson, we've got whatever it is, we've got law to stand on, so that's really beautiful. So when you bring that knowledge forward to today, and what you're doing with it and how you're serving those, and what are the benefits, what are the, just speaking to the clear, like, human attention, what is the incentive for someone to come into this knowledge? Like, how does this really benefit people when they're setting up the PMAs and the trusts and the structures that you're creating?
Great question. I love just how grounded. Well, people come to me a lot by word of mouth. I'm very good at what I do. And to me, it is about true sovereignty. Like, my inclination to describe it is that we are creating tribal nation states. We are creating, for lack of a better kind of rough equivalence, a city-state. It's a, sovereign nation, if you will. It's kind of, not totally the case, but like we don't have equal footing, with a country. Let's say we can't do treaties and things like that. But you're creating a sovereign system that has its own bylaws, has its own court systems, councils of decision-making and conflict. That is the ideal. Every private church going back eons, right? It always had these ecclesiastical tribunals, these internal conflict systems to manage its own affairs and manage its own disputes. And to me, it really is creating kind of like a self-contained ecosystem around worship and around, communion. And so when people come to me, my joy is education. And I set up, documents, get everything in place, get the business management, get your back end, get all of that management side of it put in place, yes. And to my teacher's credit, we're working with public-private hybrids. We, can utilize, for example, an LLC to manage money and to steward the money and leave the private structures totally private and things like that. You can work within the system and have a toe within the system and not just be so insanely all the way private to the point that you disenfranchise yourself, especially if you're working with large amounts of capital. But to your point or your question, essentially, what I do is I give education. That to me is the best defense of anything you could do. You could have the paper, it's still flimsy. If you do not know how to stand up for your rights, if you do not know, for example, how to invoke equity jurisdiction, or you do not know how to ask the judge to privately review your private documents and not have public, docket of or public record of your arguments and everything else. If you do not know how to actually stand on your rights and know what they are in the first place, you are still and largely at risk compared to people who do know what they're doing. And my thing in it is I want to see people sovereign in it. I want to see more and more people ownership of this. This is stuff we used to know and has been lost. So I feel like I'm just bridging a gap with education. And that is the most critical element of everything. If you are not sovereign and truly empowered in what you're doing, because you're depending on a PMA, counsel, or you're depending on an attorney, or you're outsourcing in any way, what good is that when the knock at the door comes, right? It has to be self-anchored and self-sourced. And if that is, you cannot have that without education. And if that is not there, you're not truly a sovereign leader of your tribe, let's say. Mm-hmm. So did I kind of get at the good,
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And, when we extrapolate and define what sovereignty is, it's sovereignty from erroneous regulation, sovereignty from erroneous taxation, sovereignty from this enormous matrix system that's just every day there's a new burden, a new weight, a new hassle, a new issue, a new permit. And it's this like mafioso system where they take everything away and then we pay to get every little penance back. It's absurd.
It's hullabaloo.
It's a big hullabaloo.
It's a big hullabaloo.
And the context I put it all in, that's many great teachers have spoken on, but really hit me out of the book, The Christ Blueprint. Have you seen that one? Amazing book. It's the 13 guides and allies of the Christ and each of their perspectives. And it's one of the best books I've ever read.
Cool.
So good. And the way that they describe the perfection of reality is so good. And every single obstacle that we face, every single impediment, every single annoying thing that you went through in creating all this, it's the exact right alchemical flip, the boulder to move that reveals the gold beneath it. And, Marcus Aurelius, the obstacle is the way, and Ryan Holiday, obstacle is the way, and all that. Yes.
Oh, it's juicy. It's so
much.
Good.
Yeah.
It's so good.
So much. And reality will continue acting against us until we take responsibility to really create it. Yes. So yes, inviting us into like real adulthood to be able to step up and handle all this stuff. So super, just appreciate where you're coming from.
So good.
Yeah.
It just feels so good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the spiritual freedom of it. And we have this like massive loosh harvesting operation surrounding us at all times. We got to cut off their supply, baby.
We're tired of that, Grandpa. We're tired of that.
Yeah, no more. So describe from your perspective and maybe your felt experience of what it's like when you're cutting these ties, and you're what is it like to be in your world with this right now?
Right now,
yeah.
Well, for my personal process, a big part of it for me was that I did not know I was autistic until I was 33 years old. And so I was creating havoc, didn't know it, couldn't even attune in a way, like I was overextending myself. I had no clue. I'm very ambitious. I'm very gifted at a zillion of things. And so I would take all this stuff on and I was creating challenges. I was very sensory overwhelmed and, I was creating challenges for others and for myself and not understanding very core tenets of what you're saying, like not overgiving. That one was, whoa, I was a way overgiver, overfunctioner. I'm so good at functioning. I'm just overfunctioning. I'm so good at it, but my system was overwhelmed. And I'm so sensitive. Oh my gosh. I just cannot even believe how much I was doing. But knowing that I was autistic, for me, everything in my life makes sense. I'm like looking back to elementary school. I'm like, oh my God, I literally, like everything made sense about how people treated me, what I was interpreted. And so that was a big part of it for my personal journey, was understanding neurodivergence. And once I understood that, it was really easy to take responsibility because it was like when you're autistic, and it's very sensitive and weird, I'm sure you can, and a lot of people reading this can relate, people don't always understand you, or they misinterpret you, or they make stories about you, and it's this kind of subtle like disconnection because you are so different, and because it took me forever to learn how to, like, I read books and tested stuff in the field to learn how to communicate with strangers. To learn that was a mountain in itself, just to be able to communicate with anybody. I literally read books and would go to coffee shops and try to figure out how to talk to people, and my heart would be racing. I'd be sweating like panic attack, and I'm like, yes, I'm going to talk to you past, hi, how are you, and things like that. So it was a big catch-up game for me. It was a big catch-up game. So, but once I learned that, I was much more, for me, it was like, oh, there's nothing wrong with me. I am autistic. And then I could easily kind of go back and see where I had created challenge from that standpoint. And it was never a moral issue. It was never a character issue. It was like I was sensory overwhelmed. So that's my own personal experience with that. And then once I was able to take responsibility, I stopped being plagued by these kind of shadowy, like, what's wrong with me? Or like being ashamed of something that I didn't even know because people have said these things about me. And it doesn't make sense in my system because I'm so like deeply like pure oriented toward people, helping people, serving people just with everything I have, and offering these beautiful gifts all the time, and just being completely misunderstood. And but yeah, so that's what I would say on that question. But
and thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
And I'm undiagnosed, but on some kind of spectrum somewhere, probably.
All the best people are.
Yeah. And I'm sorry for those in the past that I've damaged in my ways of being.
Yeah, didn't know.
And, I did my best. And when you reflect on that like felt experience in relation to your advances in the sovereign space, and the chains that have been loosed from you, would you speak to that a bit? And like what's it like in your heart and your being without these restrictions and taxes and things that you're free from?
on a kind of like business standpoint, you're saying?
Yeah, business and life in general.
Okay.
Because there's the preface to this is just like I have such a felt awareness of the energetic dynamic of this, right? And it goes to like our technology and the abuse of data, the abuse of our energy, right? And I want to cut off all of those cords and cut off the supply. So
got it.
Looking at you in a state of having cut off a lot of supply and operating in this more private manner. Yeah, tell us about that. What's that like?
Well, for me, the big thing was like figuring out how to monetize my autistic gifts. That was magic. And so now my autism is tremendously valuable. So on a personal standpoint, it was like moving through the initiations, like horrific, my husband dying and all these really terrible, deep initiatory processes of just like complete devastation. And then moving through that to say, I'm going to figure this out, and creating business and being able to offer my gifts. That was one big thing. And that's also something that I'm very passionate about, very gifted with, is really like figuring out the unique soul creational frequency of the person I'm around. And like, I'm really good at extracting it and kind of figuring out how to make a business for like them out of that individually, but then it's also collective, right? So creating a business that then I can help people all over the country do this, which has just been amazing. And that is a really key part of it, right? Because if we're not abundant, and that was a big part of it, is I was bootstrapping, I was serving, I was not being paid for my community work. I was like, well, we're a church, I'm going to show up, I'm going to be with the births, I'm going to be in the miscarriages, I'm going to be in the divorce courts, I'm going to show up. That's a priestess role, that's a church, like I am here to help, I'm here to serve. And I was just taking on so much service. And so moving into a place now where my gifts are monetized, and it's so juicy, it's like amazing. And I'm just so in awe of that piece alone. So that was a personal kind of shift there. And then from there, on a more sovereign, like, so you're talking more like legal systems, it's amazing, like operating out of a private trusts blow me away at their implications and their ability. And it's like, for example, deferring capital gains tax. Why are we giving all that money away when something we earned and created with our genius? Why are we giving away capital gains? What is that about? Things like that. And for example, income tax. Income tax is voluntary. There's not a single law saying we owe income tax. It is a system we opt into. It's like, and we'll talk about lawful money. Lawful money is real cool. I don't know how much time we have or where we're at with it. Where are we at?
We're only half an hour in. So,
jeez.
Yeah.
I did not expect that 1 second. Okay.
Keep rocking.
Well, talk about lawful money real quick, because lawful money is such a juicy one too, and it's like this obvious in plain sight, and that's what this is really cool. Like cool about all this is that it's in plain sight. The sovereign choice is in plain sight. It's not some highly complex. I mean, it is and it isn't. It is complex in application and moving through and getting the systems set up. That is complex because it's a matter of unlearning, and it's a matter of figuring out like different approaches to things. And like, I'll give you an example. Like, you put all your assets in a private trust and you're managing with an LLC. Well, then it's a mindset shift, right? Like, I don't need to take money out of my LLC or my trust in order to pay myself necessarily. Why? Why should I? When it's an expense of the LLC, or it's an expense of the trust to run the trust, usually most of the time. Like, I live and work out of my space, right? So things like that. I mean, we can get technical on that. You actually have to like percentage of personal use. Anyway, blah, blah, blah. But like be technical, because I have found that with podcasts, you can make these sweeping things and then there's caveats. And then if you don't say the caveat, it's like, people get the wrong idea, but way too much to share.
Torch us in the comments. It's great for engagement. And then we'll explain later. So
keep open to challenge and conversation and
yes.
And communion. But so it's like a learning curve, and you're setting these up. You're changing your entire foundation. Most people have a personal account and a business account. That's all they do. That's all they got. They think, oh, I set up an LLC. I'm managing a business. This is what I'm supposed to do. But LLCs are the least creative, least protected. It's compared to what you could do with a private trust system. Just no, honey, no. Like, let's get you on the right track. Like, magic is possible and incredible benefit. And
take us in. So
talking about lawful money, I was trailing back to that.
No, you're good. I mean, like, the magic and the benefits. I mean,
of trust.
Yeah. What are the most powerful things that come forward for you with that?
The private trust. And I have an open tab on lawful money, so we'll circle back.
Okay.
Okay.
I'll keep that an eye on that one too.
Okay, cool. So we'll come back around, because that's really how you circumnavigate income tax, and you could just do that on an individual level. So that's the whole thing with that. So you don't have to have everything else in place. But so private trust. So in order to speak about this, you kind of have to clarify the field first. People think a trust is for an estate plan, and they think that it's for when you die, which it is, definitely. But whoa, so much more. And you can operate a private trust system like a business and or like a mission, right? And that's who I work with. So you can do business trust, you can do commercial, and that's a whole other thing. But what I do and what I'm trained to do is private trust as containers, living containers for mission and for mission-based assets, right? Like, you're putting all your assets that you're getting in the church, and they're in the church. It is a church asset. You're using it for your mission, right? There ain't nothing I do that ain't on mission. That's what else are you doing? What else are y'all doing? I mean, you get on the mission, but you put all the things in everything you own. You can put your intellectual property. You make a course, put it in the private trust. It's on mission. That's a mission-based asset. Anything you do, you make an album, you make a record label, you operate it out of a private trust. And the reason is because of jurisdiction. You're in a completely different jurisdiction than the LLC. You are not subject to reporting requirements. You are not subject to all kinds of statutory interfacing. You're talking about all blah, 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 registration, permits, blah, blah, blah. Absolutely nullified. You do not need to. Why? Because it's private contract. And this is where I feel like I do these master classes, which is what I recommend for this, but just going back a little more basic, because I'm all about education, even on a free level for that, just because I want people to know. Oh my God, I want people to know. And, but essentially that we have public domain, private domain. Public domain, so when you think of government, everything's public domain. You think of municipal, courts, commercial, DEA, blah, 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 all of them, FBI, all the agencies, all executive agencies, everything you think of as government, Congress, public domain. Most people don't know the private domain exists, which is your private contracts, your free will. You are free. So you and I can do business together and be completely protected from outside interference. Why? Because it's a private contract and it's protected by the federal constitution. It says, no contract shall, no state shall make any law regarding that can impair the obligation of contract. Article 1, Section 10, it's called, if you want to look it up. And we have this very deeply protected right to contract, and that's because that's how our free will comes into play. How are you gonna what's the word I'm trying to say? Like, neuter my ability to contract. How are you going to impede on that? For one, the Constitution says you can't. But for two, that's my free will. That is my choice. I'm a sovereign being, right? So the right to contract is sacred, deeply sacred. That's what everything revolves around, is common law of contracts and the right to contract. And profound there. That's like the basis of natural law. We have free will. But, and they cannot do anything about that. They wish they could, but they can't. And that's the real linchpin, is that we do have that right. So, you set up a trust, or you set up a PMA even, they're contract-based entities. So private domain is the right to, another example of private domain is like, say we're sitting around a dinner table. You're allowed to say whatever you want. You're not regulated there. That's private domain. We are allowed tribal relations in a sovereign sense, with our full right to contract and our full right to choose how we relate and why and what's it about. And that's our right. And it cannot be touched. But most people don't even understand that that's a thing. And that's where all of our right for PMAs, private trusts, and beyond come from, is the private domain. Now, this has been tested. The Supreme Court calls the private domain a shield, shield for constitutional protections, a domain set apart for free assembly, a constitutional shelter, preserve. So there's Supreme Court cases that have explicitly discussed the private domain and its rights, and they're based on natural rights, which is based on natural law, which is based on divine law. So,
which has been held up in the courts, and can be stood on.
Oh yeah, oh yeah, especially under equity and things like that. Yeah.
Would you? So if you want to go to lawful money first, and then the equity piece is something that's also really in the conversation.
Equity. Yeah. Okay, yeah. We'll go to equity. Equity is, it's kind of, you got to talk about the history. I think it's so cool. It's like, wow. All right, so we're just going to like gloss over Rome, go straight to England, just because that's what really we inherited mostly. England based a lot on Rome, but also on what they call lex mercatoria, or I was talking about that the other day to y'all. The common, merchant law, right? And that became common law, and which then became judge-made law. So the lex mercatoria was, and imagine Europe at this time, we're talking like right around England's founding and before, you have a bunch of warring tribal nation states. They're all warring, everybody, over territory and whatever. And then there's trade, and all of them have different laws, different customs, etc. So it was creating a hardship for the merchants to be able to, trade easily. So then they all got together, create the Merchants Guild, and they're like, hey, we're going to make Lex Mercatoria. We're going to make the merchant law. And that became a commercial system and to support trade. And then so put a pin in that. And then England's system. So originally, starting in 1066, Norman Conquest, William the Conqueror, he founds England, right? And that's a big, feudal system, right? Like he's protecting his rule because of with military might, which he has to. It's a new nation, it's a new dynasty, and he's putting in place these overlords, the nobility, and saying and they're owing everything to him. He's giving them land, and then they are beholden to him. That's the fealty system, right? So over time, so what was happening is that every time like somebody would get accused of something, or they didn't want to serve in the military or whatever, they would get all their rights and land revoked. And technically everything was owned by the crown. And also what's interesting about this time is that at the time the king was responsible for his people. Everybody was under the dominion of the king. And therefore, he was technically responsible for their wrongs and rights, and as the king. Well, so he was also the ultimate judge. And so he was getting, requests to handle like, oh, you broke my cart and you dealt, and I want my cart replaced and blah, blah, blah. And so obviously it was too much. And, and there was common law courts already, right? But then when it came to, so going into equity, there's court of law, and then there's equity jurisdiction, which is court of equity. So it originated because I'm trying to think of a good example. Okay, on the cart example. So say there's a law about like if you break a cart, you have to pay for it. Doesn't matter circumstance, right? That's the law. You break someone's cart, you are responsible legally. That's the law. So everybody was being ushered into these courts, but then there were circumstances. So say it was the owner's responsibility to put a rock under the wheel, and he didn't, and but then you pushed it, and then the cart broke. But well, what about that element of responsibility that he could have put the rock under the wheel, and that was a missing part? So if you go to a court of law, a common law court, they were like, well, the law is the law. You have to pay for the cart. They're not going to take into account that the real fairness and facts of the situation, right? And so what was happening is these common law courts were so rigidly defining their rulings based on law. It was the letter of law. Well, that's the law, sorry, right? But it wasn't taking into account the actual morality and fairness. So what happened? Well, the king got overwhelmed, of course, and then, because how the heck wouldn't he? I don't even know how that was. But then, so he created a court of equity. They're called, at the time, they're called courts of chancery. And they appointed the chancellors. And the chancellor originally was one, but then, they were the ecclesiastics I was mentioning earlier, the scholars and the religious leaders. And they were responsible for implementing equity or / rightfulness. Equity meaning equitable, honoring, moral, what's fair, what's just. So they were starting to hear cases based on these actual things. So you would go to a common law court and get denied the real facts. You'd go to a court of equity, and that ruling in this example would be like, oh, well, you were responsible for putting the rock on it, and you didn't. So you're actually to blame, even though the law says this. So it became where equity was an interpretation based on legal maxims and based on natural law. And they had to make rulings based on natural law. So everything was originally natural law. So was our system up till about 100 years ago or so. All the rulings were based on natural law and philosophy and principle of fairness. Because truth and justice was the ideal. And so, thousands or hundreds of years, it's evolving, and America is created, and could go into so many trails here, especially if we're talking about private trusts. But so then we inherited a lot of England's system and built our system off that, along with a lot of other sources, inspirations. And so equity. So, there was always that split between courts of law, common law courts, and there was splits to equity courts. That was always the case. And there are still, in some states, like Delaware's one, where they still have the courts of chancery and the court of law. They're still separate. But they got merged in early 1900s, they got merged. And, what was happening is industrialization was happening, and, they want uniformity, and they want everything to be easy. File this motion, do it all uniform, and do it, it became mechanical. You have to do this, and you have to do this, and you have to do this, and if you don't follow these procedures, a civil procedure, well, then your case is not valid, and blah, blah, blah. So it became a lot of where equity was less important, and the reason is because they wanted to hide it. They wanted to hide that you could invoke, and you still can. You can invoke equity jurisdiction and have your case, especially if you're operating on private domain entities. You can have your private domain entities be reviewed, let's say an in-camera proceeding, which means in chamber. So, you file a motion, but Your Honor, this is a private matter, and to support the protections of my private rights, I would like you to review this in your private chambers off the docket. So he will then review, he will either clear the courtroom or literally go into a separate chamber. Everything's different, everywhere. All states are different, everything's different. But they will review the information completely off record. Private.
The odds of honor and fairness in that scenario go drastically higher because they're
equity
not get
jurisdiction.
Exposed. And yes, and what is the level of awareness that you feel that most judges have? Oh,
judges, from my understanding, now I don't have a lot of experience. I'm going on what teachers say, etc. And I have an amazing attorney in California who, oh my gosh, I'm working on a back end system for her to support my clients. She's next level. She litigant for 25 years, and anyway, we're partnering and collaborating. But I'm going on her experience as well. But essentially, judges, to my understanding, are extremely knowledgeable about this. They understand it's very rarely invoked. They very rarely ever have this exercised.
Yeah, and the way I've heard it explained is that they are malevolently benevolent, and that they're doing things and making rulings and causing harm they stand as like the arbiters for those who are knowledgeable enough to exercise their truth
Yes.
and can stand in honor.
Yes.
And they'll kind of keep punishing us until we stand up and say, no, this is the way it's supposed to be, Your Honor. I'm in honor.
Yes.
I'm not giving my honor away to you.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Oh, and many different pitfalls on this. They could call you a defendant and you answer, boom, you're in their jurisdiction.
Yeah. Do you understand? No, I don't. I understand nothing. I'm not understanding anything. You're not standing on me.
All that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Even challenging jurisdiction properly and like accordingly, like at the right time, things like that can ruin jurisdiction. Once jurisdiction is lost to their courts, well, then you've lost it. So you have to know what you're doing. You have to know how to navigate and really like from the get-go, how you're responding, how you're filing, what you're doing, and know how to challenge that jurisdiction and etc. It's a dance.
Do you believe that even walking through the banister like puts you on the ship? Is that a thing?
This is beyond my scope.
Okay.
I would have to ask Jessica, but
one of my friends and mentors, he says, and I trust him, that he stood on these principles and basically litigated himself from the pews and wouldn't even come into the dock.
That's beyond
the docket and the ship and all this maritime stuff.
Well, and some of that gets into sovereign citizen stuff, and some of that gets into like a big, philosophy that me and Jessica and teachers that I've had around this, at least in theory, it's like a lot of that is how shall I say? You're already in weird waters. Like basically in the private, super, super, super radical private everything zone, you're not wanting to use the system. You're wanting to stay completely out of the system. But what if we could use the system, file motions in equity jurisdiction, and still navigate in integrity? But you're not completely outside. Like you're using the system to your advantage because it is there for your advantage if you know how to invoke it. And it's much simpler in that vein. Yeah.
That feels like truth to me, that's like the connects to the spiritual maxim. I believe that it's all as it's supposed to be, and that the Creator has allowed this stuff to happen so that we can step up and exercise our rights properly.
Yeah. If we study, and that's the genius of it, and play with it. To me, it's an experiment, and thank God willing, like I'm not in these positions of challenge at this point, and I've been very vulnerable. I've been working with medicine for 8 years. I've been serving. I've been slandered. I've been dealing with weird obsessed people that want to hurt me and not have humanizing conversations and all kinds of manner of things. I've been very vulnerable, and thankfully I've never been in that position, and I know my rights at the same time, and I'm protected because of that. Because if there was a knock at the door, I know exactly what to do. If there's a warrant, I know exactly what to look on. Is it real? Is it valid? Etc. I know how to navigate, and that is my best protection. And even if I were challenged, I would know how to navigate. So that's, to me, the huge value of this work is really just deeply rooted in knowing of truth in that way and the system. But there was something else I wanted to riff on what you were saying, but I forgot what it is.
The sovereign citizen stuff, going to the courts.
Oh, I think I wanted to just simply state that when you invoke equity jurisdiction, the judge actually flips. So there's serving the court, and then suddenly they become trustee. I forget the actual particulars of this, and go review it. Basically, they become completely beholden. Like I want to say they're a trustee and you're the beneficiary, and they have fiduciary duty, which is really serious in the courts, really high standard. Like they have to adhere to fiduciary duty. Everybody does if you're a fiduciary. But I want to say that something like that, I don't quote me, I will go back and look, but essentially that they flip and they then are serving you. In equity.
Become a magistrate rather than a judge?
These are I need to go get in some particulars here. And again, this is beyond my scope. I'm a researcher, and this is not legal advice. I am not a lawyer.
Right. And if we go back to your zone of genius and how you're serving, would you walk us through what it is that people are doing inside your community, inside your coursework?
Yeah. It's so cool. Like, I don't even know how I found the strength to do this, but it was very soon after my husband passed, and I somehow found the strength and just put everything into it and built it. So what I did is I built 2 courses. The first one, and the most well-known one, is, I call it 1A, like the foundation, and it's essentially Sacred Medicine Church as the foundation, and it's really an all-encompassing system for medicine church establishment in the private domain. It includes, so I'll just like go over the modules. It's the first one is divine and natural law, obviously. The second one is America's legal system, understanding the public domain, and understanding the commercial, understanding the public. You know, if you're challenged, where would it come from? What is it? How does it work? To kind of demystifying. Third one is private domain, understanding contracts, understanding, you know, our rights, enumerated powers, etc., and why, like where these rights come from, which is something I didn't talk about, but basically the Constitution, the federal Constitution was ratified by the states. The enumerated powers are listed, meaning they only have the powers that are listed. The states retained the rest of the powers. Well, then the states have enumerated powers. They only have the powers listed, and the people are what retain the rights otherwise and powers. So people have all kinds of power in the private domain if they know how to use it. So those enumerated, so things like that, understanding, you know, the private domain. Fourth is religious liberty and free exercise, understanding, you know, the long history of that in this country, understanding, you know, especially particularly, this is where it's super genius, is around medicine work. You know, I can set up PMAs all day long. I work with Tantra churches. I can set up any church. But where I'm really shining is like understanding also the medicine element. And so a lot of that's in there as well. And then 5 is tax system, as well as like structures, management structures. There's 3 paths. You can be PMA managed and just have the PMA be its own whole system and have its own bank account, manage its own money. You can do LLC managed, where you have the LLC manage all the money on behalf of the private church, so the private church doesn't manage money. And then I do trust managed, which is obviously a whole other realm. And so the trust just manages all the assets for the PMA. So then, and so all that, and then module 6 is the documents. I go very thoroughly. Here's what the documents say. Here's what they are. Here's what it means, so that they understand it. Module 7 is safety, sacraments, and culture. That's one of my favorite modules. It all goes into like how to talk about the sacrament, you know, safeties, how to, you know, be a better facilitator, and very like hard-earned things about facilitation over time, and, you know, different resources and etc. And then culture, like how to build a religion element, cultural elements. I don't go super deep into that because you can reverse engineer it from the cases, if you will. But because I have another like whole template of if you want to set up the religion, I can give you templates. But then, the last one is ongoing maintenance and contingencies. Talk about, you know, responsibilities over time, language, stay private, etc. So that's module course 1. And I do everything. I help them set up the LLC, help them, you know, get the bank account, blah, 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 and all of it's set up. So by the end of the class, it's 12 weeks. By the end of it, it's literally set up. Of course, depends on your diligence. Not everybody is diligent, and that's on you. You know, this is about sovereignty. I am not here to hold people's hand. I am not here to do it for you. To me, this is, if you can't even set up your own church and you can't even manage the business elements of your own church, you are not ready to lead a tribal nation state. That's the thing. If you're outsourcing to me, I am an amazing resource, but I'm fallible. I'm overextended. I have a lot going on, and I manage my own church too. You know, I have all kinds of stuff going on all the time. And so it's about, you know, can they truly step into sovereignty and etc. So that's a big one for me. But yeah, so I do that. That's course 1, and it's really good. I'm very proud of it. And then I do the same for private trusts. I have a whole other course for it. And that's a much steeper learning curve for sure. You have to really know what you're doing if you're operating with the trust, and know how to manage money, and know how to, you know, pay people, and all those kind of elements of operations. And and I go well more in depth about equity and the court system and everything in that module or class. So it's like step 1, set it up. Step 2, set up the trust, and then from there, if they want to do the templates for like the religion and really go have all the cosmology and everything really built, I can do that as well. And then I'm doing other things on the back end, like alumni community, and what I really want to take that. And I've been producing the trust class this year, which is, oh my God, hard. That was really hard. But I want to do like a conflict mediation system, like a tribal council system. And a lot of the community leaders I've worked with are really passionate about that as well, because they've all gone through the same things we've been. Community splits without humanizing conversations, being pedestalized to demonization pipeline, like all of these guys. We tired of that, fam. Chill the fuck out. Let's talk about it.
Yes.
Sorry.
Repair your relationships.
Yeah.
Stop hiding and projecting.
For
Repair
real.
'em.
For real.
Yeah.
And so a lot of that. And so the ideal is, say you have other community leaders that are available across country, they're neutral, they're not involved in politics. Well, you can just hire them to sit in as neutral parties. So I'm really passionate about that, because, you know, my husband died in the midst of a big community split. It's I'm very passionate about it. I've been dealing with it a long time, scapegoating, and Yeah, so I really want to like make resources like that available. So anyway, that's what I do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Love all of it. Love all of it. And some questions or some like common pitfalls or things that you can help people, if they are, because there's lots of attorneys and speakers and providers in this space. So could you give some yellow flags or red flags for people to be aware of or to avoid when they are evaluating their allies in this
like
space?
who to work with?
Yeah.
Well, to me, a big one is like, all right, you're making a medicine church and you're receiving documents and education from an attorney, but like, or for example, but have they run their church? Like, have they run a church? Like, are they hey, sweet one, little cutie patootie, you're so cute. Oh my goodness.
Not yet.
Like, all right, so have you actually embodied? Do you do what you're teaching? Right? Yeah. Set up, know the commercial, know all that. And attorneys are by definition public agents of the court. Their oath makes them support the courts before their clients. If you look at the bar oath, and they are technically public officers. And so,
and the bar's British Admiralty
accreditation registry.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So technically speaking, and there are a great many of them, very thankful for what you do. There are a great many of them awakening. Like, we're just so thankful. Thank you so much for contributing your genius to the awakening and bridging this gap of understanding the courts and the system and helping us revise, and let's work together. And I've dealt with a lot of like, oh my gosh, every time I like promote these stuff on a wide scale, I get so many attorneys. They want to debate me on every little thing and like liability, and they want to come out of the woodwork. I'm like, yeah, and we're all got liability. You serving freaking toad medicine at a park, you got liability. Like, these people be doing all kinds of crazy stuff with these medicines. Like, they're all at risk. Everybody's at risk. You're at risk if you have a 501c3 or not. You're at risk. Like, everybody's at risk, We're on the frontier. So, but yeah, I would say, do they know what they're doing in terms of like, yeah, it's one thing to get everything in place. It's another thing to actually run a church. Because holy guacamole, it's a lot. It's a lot. It's a lot. Like, it is a lot of work and complexity, and you're navigating and fielding people's things, and you're dealing with your own sensitivity. Like, magical creatures tend to build these churches, and it's a lot on us, and serving and birthdays and all of it. It's so much, and so to me, understanding those elements from an embodied place is important. It's an important element. We are setting up tribes. Do you know how to build a tribe? And a lot of people I work with, they set up a church, but they have no magnetism. They're not building a community hearth. That's what I call it, like the sacred flame. They're not building a central altar. They're not building that family hearth. And so then they get frustrated. It's like, well, how do I get people in my circles and stuff? I'm like, well, you got to build the culture. You got to build the magic, build the heart, and, and work on yourself too. Like, become your own interesting person so that people are, drawn and things like that. And so to me, the culture is a huge element of it. And we are building tribes. This is about tribal nations. And it's not one thing, get in place, get all the structures in place, but then what, So that's maybe what I would say. My teacher also like has a lot more experience in this realm. Like, I kind of focus. That's what I do. I research, I focus, I'm in the books, I'm in the work. And I don't be looking a lot in the field. I don't really know who's doing what and why and blah, blah, blah. I've heard horror stories from people. They come to me, they're like, yeah, they set up my trust in PMA and I have no idea what to do. 2 years later, I haven't set up anything because I have no education. And I'm like, God, that is some bullshit, Damn, those people be ripped off thousands of dollars and they're not being given any kind of system or support in that vein. But I would just say, like, make sure you're getting education, because that is more important than document. Like, that is the critical element. You are not sovereign if you don't know what's really going on. So maybe that's what I would say. I could keep going, keep flowing, keep going.
Yeah, well, epic flowing and going. And when you look at your legacy and you look at the impact you're here to make, and you look at your divine mission and why you're really on the planet, tell us a little bit about like the core of the core for all this for you.
Legacy is such a like the crux of everything, because even with these trusts, you're setting in place a foundation that can outlast you hundreds of years if you structure it right. And it's really the crux of everything. What we're talking about is, you want to have a medicine church. Okay, well, what happens when you pass, right? Does the next generation take on what you're doing? And are there provisions for that? Is there structure for that? So it's cool that you take it this way. For me, my legacy is very multifaceted. I am very multifaceted. I am an autistic researcher. Like, whoa, I could do that all day long. I am also a costume artist. I love self-expression. I love creating costumes and art and making wearable art. And I just dream of these archetypal parties of all of us just fully expressed in these kind of golden age ways, and just not everybody like so like I go to the grocery store and I'm like, man, everybody is so basic. Like, I want what would you be if you were in another epoch? Like, who are you? You're a wizard and you look like you play golf, like, what are you doing? For example, or something. And I want expression, and I want people to, yeah, so that's a part of my legacy. Deep communion of like feminine gathering of people, and warmth and hearth connection and true mutual aid. Like, so many communities, it's business, and it's like, let me sell you things, and there's not mutual aid. Like, a lot of people come to my community from other communities and they're like, this is really genuine. Like, you actually show up when I moved, and they're surprised that there's real relation and real mutual aid, for example. And I'm like, to me, that, like, what is a community otherwise? What are these other communities doing if there's not real deep trust, and like, you're really vulnerable, and anyway. So that's a part of my legacy. I'm a poet. I want to publish poetry. I want to learn how to play the harp. I play the ukulele, but I want to learn how to play the harp. Like, a lot of things, and I would say for this work, I want to leave in place legacies of legacies. That would really be what it is, like, really put in place for these big players. I work with some big players making some really magical stuff happen, and their system is secure in a sense that will outlive them. And to me, that is profound, and just God guided. I don't even know how I got here. I literally just showed up and did the work, and I did what I was called to do, and it was very hard, but I did it, and I'm here, and it's just more beautiful than I could have ever made happen myself. Yeah.
Love all of that. And there's a Carl Jung quote that comes to mind, and it's, if you go about your mission earnestly and diligently, unknown allies will always rise to your aid. It's a slight paraphrase, but but leaning into the synchronicity, leaning into the divinity, leaning into the miraculous matrix that we're inside of, which is so annoying and so dull and so stupid on so many levels, and so majestically beautiful. And we really do have the potential for heaven on earth here. And we truly are at this bifurcation point where so many people that are living in these, lesser expressions, let's just say, and working at the grocery store or wherever they are, and my heart goes out to a lot of people that are really going to get hurt in the coming years, because it's going to get weird, it's going to get tough on a lot of levels. And there's a big nasty plan coming to life, and it's been put in place for a long time. And even like the founding of America and biblical prophecies and what Israel really is, and like world war potentials, which I really hope we just jump off that timeline. But it's been put together for so long. And the beautiful truth about all of that, and that where I find peace and purpose and a deep exhale, is the knowing that it is the force that will divide us.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and even Yeshua said, like, I came to bring a sword. He wasn't, and not just war, but like division. And like the root word of holy means to divide, to be separate. So, as much as I'm here for the unity of all that we are, I'm really here for those that are seeking to create these communities and create these villages and create this epic, beautiful network that is going to come to life. And it is happening now. And with gratitude to my man Zach here to the right, and this incredible land we've created here.
Thank you so much, Zach.
Yeah, thank you, brother.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, and Marguerite, and everything that happened to bring this to life is just miraculous. So, we're doing our part and leaning in, and if this resonates with you and you want to do your part and lean in and be part of creating this village and others, we have some really magical parts and pieces coming to life. And Mary's getting antsy. Yeah, Mary's here. And sorry about some bumps on the camera throughout.
She has a crazy tail.
I know. You're such a wild beast. Relax, man. We're almost there. Not yet. It's not lunchtime.
Wow.
Man. So yeah, there's just a miraculously beautiful future to create, and a really nasty reality to move away from. It is not 2:00 yet. Stop. That's when she's about to eat lunch. In any event, though, With all that said, would you give us, Mary, stop. Would you give us
Love you.
a riff from your heart and soul to kind of encapsulate all this, and either as a call to action or inspiration, or just like what wants to come through you now as we bring this lovely conversation to a conclusion?
Yeah, I just want to just deeply acknowledge and thank you for taking the leap to truly put resources behind these missions. For I've held this vision for so long, so many have, and to actually put resources and take that leap and trust is so incredibly important, and just really is the, I want to say, like the spark to create the bonfire that we all are wanting to be warmed by. And I just thank you so deeply for anybody also who's likewise putting resources behind these visions and taking this leap, because this is the time for it. And for my part, I just want to just thank every single person that is leaning into the challenge of self-responsibility, of making amends, and truly just stepping into the unknown in the name of your soul. For me, making a church did not make sense. Absolutely nothing about it made sense. It did not make sense financially, it did not make sense personally, it did not make sense at all. But here I am, 8 years later, and just utterly thriving in this mission that I devoted to, and I kept going and I kept going, and I truly feel that there is a blueprint in every single soul, that there is a divinely guided blueprint that is in us each to become that puzzle piece for the whole, and to be able to, let's say, sprout and to become that after many challenges. And you just keep going and you keep going and you keep going, and you are devastated at many points of the turn, and you want to leave this place and you want to quit, and then you just keep going because it's rightful, and eventually it'll lead you to where you're supposed to be. And I just think every single person that is doing that for the benefit of humanity and yourself, we want to see your expression. We want to see who you become. And just what a joy to get to express with all these magical, incredible people that just have that trust in the unknown and in the heart and the soul to guide us through. So thank you to everybody who's doing that. Yeah, and thank you so much to both of you. Yeah.
Beautiful. And our pleasure, our mission. Thank you. Absolute gratitude and respect and honor of what you've gone through, and everything you expressed here, and the challenges and some others that you shared more privately that were really, really difficult. And so I just want to celebrate the warrior woman in you that has gone forward into these great challenges.
Yeah.
And for those out there that are seeking to rise more fully into your gifts, into your purpose, into your passion, into your prosperity, we will link this magical being's materials down below. And stay tuned, because there'll be a lot more to come on what we're bringing to life here. And if you want more information on what we're doing with Aurea, again, check the caption.
Magic.
And here at Reimagine Ranch in Elgin, Texas, get ready, because it is coming. And there is an incredible network of people that are coming to life around this to bring forward these critical places and spaces and time for you, for me, for Clementine, for Zach, for all of us to come into our gifts, to express them and experience heaven on earth with all the magical medicines, all the natural law, divine protections. And we really are approaching, and we are now in the frequency of a new golden age. So feel it, know it, believe it. And with all my heart, thank you so much. And so excited to see where this all goes from here.
Thank you. Yes. Yes, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Woo! Okay, that was great.
That was fun.
Yes.
Oh, Mary's up here too.